this journey, please do. But we've got Drew, roll with them. Did I just shout?
You're good. You're good.
Dead name. Okay. Drew, and he is the housing coordinator for Autism Edmonton and Autism Society of Alberta, and hosts the Autism Housing Network of Alberta, and a board member of the Autism Independent Living Association. So lots of wealth of experience here in terms of lived experience and inclusion in that. So we're super excited to have you, Drew, and nice to meet you. We have Leanne Carr as well. Thanks, Leanne. Leanne's the mother of a son with autism and became involved in housing and co-created the Autism Independent Living Association. So obviously somebody who's a really strong advocate in the community supporting this work. We have Erin Rutherford. Nice to see you, Erin. Erin is with Edmonton City Council. She's been since October 2021. I have to say, I follow Erin a little bit on X, and I really appreciate, she's somebody I see on council who's asking the hard questions, and I just super appreciate that. So thank you so much, Erin, for the work that you do for our community. We have Joshua Evans, who's an associate prof of human geography at the University of Alberta, studies geographies of exclusion. Inclusion, has been doing a lot of research around inclusion, accessibility, and availability, and we were really proud to work with Josh over the last couple of years on transportation issues and that as well. Nice to have you, Joshua.
Thank you.
Then we have Green Butterfly Woman, the name I love, who's also known, colonized name is Nadine Chalifoux, who is an urban indigenous advocate, somebody who has a lived experience. I think she's been the chair, even the chair for the Edmonton Coalition on Housing and Homelessness for 3 years. Yeah, past 3 years. And Nadine's a fierce advocate, never afraid to shake the spaces and say what needs to be said, and just really nice to see you, Nadine. And then lastly, we have, lastly but definitely not least, up from Calgary, we have Kavin Sheikheldin, and is a member of the Self Advocacy Federation and the Disability Action Hall. Super tireless advocate. Really awesome to see the story in the film, Kavin, about what you do for advocacy and how you bring people together. So we have a really beautiful wealth of experience on this panel. What I love is we have lived experience, but advocacy experience, and even that municipal government experience and academic experience really will help shape us forward. Okay, ready for this? I have no pathway, but we're just going to dive in. Okay. So let's maybe start with some kind of bigger kind of general questions in terms of accessibility. We saw in the film a lot of the barriers, a lot of the issues, from income supports to accessibility and how accessibility is defined. But I'm just wondering, maybe I'm going to throw maybe the first kind of questions at those of you with kind of lived experience on the panel. Is like, this piece about inaccessible housing, like how does that ricochet? Like how does that impact social inclusion or isolation of people with disabilities? And, because housing is just one element. How does that, and we heard about food, but how does it impact people's inclusion in community? I wonder maybe, does anybody feel like, okay, Leanne is going to take the reins first, let's go for it. That's assuming that I got this working?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, sorry. I actually have lived experience in multiple factors. My brother was injured in a car accident when I was 12, and he became a quadriplegic. So accessibility and accessibility in housing has always been part of who I am and things like that. After my son was diagnosed, I was looking around. It became more accessibility, not just the physical space, being able to get around in a wheelchair and have a walk-in shower and different things like that, but also accessible to people who have sensory issues. And a lot, it's not just people with autism, a lot of people have sensory issues, including myself, right? We had one lady who I had a conversation with about a month ago, and she was in a place where it was supposed to be non-smoking. She was very, very sensitive to smell. And she was actually sleeping in her car at night because the smell of smoke in her apartment was so bad from people smoking in there that she couldn't even sleep in there, right? So she had housing, but it was not meeting her needs and stuff like that. And the landlord really couldn't do anything, right? So, so accessibility, my sister-in-law, for example, she needed a hip replacement for probably about 3 years. And they were on the 3rd floor walk-up, and she could only leave her apartment if my brother could take her downstairs and help her go downstairs, right? And they couldn't afford to move anywhere else. So accessibility affects everybody. It's not just a person with a disability, right? You know, we are all, like I learned from my brother at a very young age, we are all one accident or one health crisis away from being a disabled person. So it's very, very important.
I wonder, Nadine or Kavin, would either of you like to comment on that question? Just kind of like the broader impacts of housing accessibility.
For me, it's a lifelong learning journey because I have a degenerative disease. So my body is degenerating as I get older, and the older I get, my home is becoming less and less accessible. So when I had to find something more barrier-free, it was made to be somewhat wheelchair accessible, which will be where I end up eventually, but at the point that right now, like Sarah mentioned in the movie or in the film, things like dishwashers make a difference to someone who can't stand for very long. Stove that has like a stove top separate from the oven makes it easier for someone who cannot stand, because at least they can get in there and sit down and try to cook, or use the oven separately at their level instead of having to bend down. These things just are gradual things that go with people, and we don't build homes that are able to age with people or to degenerate with people. And so for me, I can't leave my place where I'm at because there's no other options.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, as I was saying, on the video that you folks saw me on, accessibility for me doesn't only mean a place with an elevator and a lower floor, whatever. It also means a place, as I said again in the video, that is big and wide enough. And when I say big and wide enough, it should be big or wide enough to fit. Again, let's say non-folding mobility aids, such as a non-folding wheelchair, non-folding walker, and there's also other accessibility or mobility items that we need to do our daily activities or routines at home that we might need to fit inside our place that cannot fit, and so that's why we need a bigger, wider unit in apartment buildings across Alberta and all across Canada.
Thank you, Kevin. I wonder, Drew, if maybe we pass the mic to Drew, and Drew kind of hitting on that piece of community. Oh, of course, he doesn't.
See if I can do, I can probably do without the mic.
Yeah, the community inclusion piece, the isolation, and how this
Yeah, community inclusion, and then too, just jumping off the accessibility thing as well. I find that it's not always just about the physical structure of the building. It's also about who's providing you with those services. So do they understand what your needs are in terms of your ability to communicate? Are there opportunities to create community within your building? And those are some of the things that I think have a lot of promise, is the idea of landlords providing tenants with the opportunities to come together and create community. So I know that some of the ideas coming out are this idea of a concierge at the front of a desk, at the front of a building, for all tenants to be able to access, to clarify, maybe what's happening within the building, instead of simply getting a notice tacked to your front of your door that says, you're getting sprayed by bed bugs. Like, it'd be nice to have a little bit of clarity sometimes so that you're not completely freaked out. That's that concierge idea, and then that kind of facilitating community inclusion, and so providing tenants with some resources to actually do that. I think another really cool piece, and it was touched on in the video, is a really clear pet policy, like what is going to be permitted, because that has a really huge impact on social wellness. So promoting those ideas and showing landlords that by implementing those into their business models, they're going to have better outcomes. So it's kind of, there's that educational piece that we really just have to educate people on and try out different ideas, different models.
Thank you, Drew. Well, let's come this way. Let's go to you, Erin. And I think you're in this interesting position where you're in the municipal government. I think the municipal government often carries a lot of the weight and issues around housing, but there's always these jurisdictional challenges. I wonder if you could speak to, your thoughts about advocacy around issues of accessible housing and what the city's role is, but what also the challenges in addressing these issues.
Yeah, that's hello. Hello. Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's something that we often hear. Every order of government is responsible for housing, and I don't disagree. However, this is a council that has been trying. We've declared a housing and houselessness emergency. We've been trying in every way we can to make progress, and we are getting a lot of roadblocks because of our jurisdictional limitations. For example, we wanted to go above and beyond code on certain things, including accessibility. And then the provincial government said, no, sorry, we're not going to allow you to do that. We had inclusionary zoning in our city charter, which would have allowed us to require developers to build affordable housing. And the provincial government said, no, sorry, we're not going to allow you to do that. We're tearing that part of the charter up. So this is what we're being faced with. And we're still progressing, but it is very hard when you feel handcuffed, when you have a government that has said that permanent supportive housing isn't something they see as a priority, when they're further investing money in shelter spaces instead of housing. So I think that, I always think about my role is a few things as a city councillor. Is to advocate and bring the voices of the people in my community to anybody else with power and influence in any order of government or any kind of, even Home Ed or Savita or those kind of organizations. And it's also about challenging our administration. Because I think one of the things that I've really noticed around the housing space specifically is that ableism and those biases that exist in the people that are creating the systems that are supposed to help you. And how, I know myself and another one of my counselors, Councillor Tang, are really big on making sure that people with lived and living experience are at the table, and you're not making, I really like the expression, nothing about us without us. And I'm seeing constant pushback even from administration sometimes on that. So it's very interesting. But definitely a lot more that we can do. There is policies that the city can still enact. In fact, I was just talking yesterday, I went to there's an organization in the ward I represent called Alberta Helping Animal Society, and they do free veterinary care for anybody in poverty, and they're big on the human-animal bond. And so they've been writing letters to landlords saying, this is an emotionally support cat, to allow that person to be able to have a cat. And so they were advocating to me about some of the things around how we need to make people having animals in affordable housing units more accessible. So I've walked away with some ideas on things that we can do at a local level. But these things, unfortunately do take time sometimes.
Thank you, Erin. Well, let's come to Josh. Josh, kind of building on that, Erin started to talk about this idea of consultation and lived experience and the voices, and I just wonder if you can reflect on that, even your learnings, but kind of what are things to be thinking about? What are most effective ways in consulting on these issues? And I'd love Josh to answer this, and I'd love to take it down, to Nadine and Kavin on this one as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, my work with people living with disabilities, one of the things that I've learned is how important this mantra that Erin mentioned, nothing about us without us, is. And when we're talking about the rights of people living with disabilities, that includes the right to be actively involved in decisions that affect your lives. And so I think this is something that has to be taken seriously. It has to be something that has to be implemented early in decision-making processes. So when we're talking about housing, this is something that has to be implemented in the planning and design stages of a new housing project. What I've also learned is that many they demand more than just simply being consulted. They demand being directly involved in decisions. And so I think what we need to do is go beyond consultation and explore things like participatory design or co-design, where people are working alongside architects and builders, informing them on the key decisions that make huge differences in the housing that's eventually built. So it's critical, because if we want to go beyond the building codes and build housing that's truly inclusive, we really need to involve those end users in these key phases in projects.
I wonder for Kavin or Nadine or Leanne or Drew, if you have any reflections on this idea of being involved, that right to participate in the decisions that affect you, right? Like, what does that consultation look like? What's critical to be thinking about there?
Comment, I don't know. I just had a comment. Can you hear me? Yeah. I just had a comment about this. Like people might want to get involved in take part in consultations, etc., but might not have the capacity or might not be allowed. As I used to be under guardian and trusteeship, and so the guardian might make a decision where they wouldn't want the individual to be involved in what that individual wants to be involved in. Really, it's hard and but to not be involved.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to be involved when you have to be involved.
Yeah.
Because it's your life, it's your own needs, it's your own suffering that you're going through. But to have someone who maybe is new to that kind of frontier of help advocating for themselves or advocating for someone that they're supporting or they're living with, it's a whole new ballgame, and it can be very daunting and very very tough on a person's mental health. And because it affects people's mental health, is to be active and help support others for their needs, for the rights that they have. It uses up a lot of energy, and without some kind of way to, reintegrate that energy back into a person, people get very tired of worn out, and then they give up.
Yeah.
And when they give up, it's like, oh, well, we tried, or some people will say, I want to, I just don't think I can do it. I don't think that it's for me, and unfortunately, there's too many of that because we're being told in so many different ways as a society that ableism still takes the lead on decision making.
Yeah.
And it's just, we gotta start at the roots and change bylaws, change, codes, make sure that we're holding people accountable for these changes. Because without having these supports, we're left in less than a decent quality of life.
I wonder, maybe building a bit, Nadine and Leanne and Drew, maybe hitting on this too a little bit, is that we're all, we started the autism network across the province. We have that piece. We also have the Edmonton Coalition on housing, which plays this important role in the getting involved and engaging. I wonder if you all could, do you have any reflections on even that role and the barriers of engagement for even these coalitions? Because my experience with coalitions is, even though we coalesce and we come together to be that voice, getting considered or even included, because we are often bringing the uncomfortable conversations, so we are never welcome at the table. And I wonder if I could have your reflections on that network side of things, of advocacy, and how is that, the benefits, the needs, the challenges, and maybe that could spin off that question about consultation. And yeah, Nadine, go and pass it.
So I'm the chairperson of the Edmonton Coalition on Housing and Homelessness. And we've been around for almost 40 years now. Without being around for almost 40 years, we have no reputation, which is what a lot of newer coalitions and organizations have a problem with, because you don't get distinguished to be somebody who should be respected. You don't get, that namesake that goes with the experience over that kind of a time frame and that many decades. But we find it difficult even for us to advocate because of our members. We don't want our members to be punished by the government, for things that we're saying on their behalf, because they're tired of fighting for a lost cause. They need funding, they need supports, they need, trained personnel. And if we're going to fight and put people in those difficult conversations, make people, government and other people, decision makers, policy, builders, developers, whatever, make them uncomfortable, we don't want it to backlash on our members. And so it's like a tipping plate that you have, and you don't know which way to go, because you don't want to offend one, but you don't want to make another one lose everything when you're trying to actually help them get more. And so we try our best, and we have to pick and choose sometimes our battles. Unfortunately, when it comes to housing, disability rights still is at the bottom of that conversation. And we're trying to change that, but there are so many other issues that come up that are just so difficult to put on the plate. Again, we don't want to have our members lose anything for it.
Hi. Yeah, I've been nodding along to everybody's conversations here. As a small organization ourselves, we've been challenged with, all levels of government. They want innovative approaches to housing, but they don't want to fund innovative ideas for housing, right? So it's taken us 10 years just to kind of get enough traction that we're starting to be recognized by funders. We're starting to be recognized by the levels of government, right? Because we have an innovative idea, right? Which also includes self-governance and things like that, right? But you can't say you want innovative housing and innovative approaches, but you're not willing to support groups that are willing to do it, right? And that is one of the challenges we face, right? And then also too, like as a mother of an autistic adult now, I know so many parents, I know so many autistic adults, they're just tired because everything is a fight. Everything, every single day. Like one of our members said, that, I can't go home at the end of my day. This is my life, right? And so that's exhausting. And when you're doing it unpaid, like most of us are, or at minimal pay, it's exhausting to keep doing that, right? And I think we need that recognition from the other levels of government and things like that of how much work nonprofit organizations like ourselves do, right? So, yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's really tough when you can't, I don't think you can really have like a one-size-fits-all approach. As we heard, some folks really desire certain housing types, other folks are wanting other housing types. So I think you kind of have to move in all directions at once sometimes, because if you do kind of paintbrush for everything, can actually have the opposite effect. So you can actually become really cost prohibitive for builders to even get something off the ground if the request is everything has to be wheelchair accessible. While there needs to be that option or retrofit or some innovative ways to accommodate those needs, I think you have to be really careful about saying everything needs to be the same, because as you mentioned, Leanne, like that people are looking for innovative housing solutions, but But often, sometimes those solutions can come at low cost as well. And I think, like you said too, Nadine, like picking and choosing your battles, like you got to kind of understand who you're talking to, right? So if you're talking to a provincial government that's saying no to things like simple things, like when your municipalities are asking for a higher building code and they're saying no, that's actually a good indicator of like maybe where to start. Because if you get Calgary on board, you get some of these other municipalities on board saying all the municipalities are asking for this, and we still are getting no from the provincial government, so finding out where to push those buttons, but the no's that the city of Edmonton's been getting is a kind of a good indicator. And then, where are they willing to spend money? We know that they are willing to release funds to certain things, but then leveraging, those directions that we see them already going in, that they're going to be able to, to say yes to in some ways. And if I can veer off topic slightly,
Yeah, please.
one of the ideas that I'm really trying to promote right now is this idea of embedding light supports within a residential setting. So a lot of folks with disabilities, intellectual disabilities, autism, they aren't approved for PDD, but they still require some support, like we heard in the video. Now, what the government can do is make it easier for developers, landlords, and private care providers to come together and create agreements with each other. So that could be, another place to kind of push them, because they don't have to actually put any money down. They just have to create an easier, they have to cut red tape, which they love doing. So there are like these little avenues that I think we can kind of work our ways into. But it's like being really specific about and intentional about what we're asking and what we're pushing for, and then using that coalition, that single voice to kind of say, this is what we need.